is a very important moment in the life of our organization to be honored as an organization, the African National Congress, by the International Union of Muslim Scholars.
In your election news headlines this hour, the international Muslim scholars and leader from the United States, Europe and East Africa have called on all South Africans of Muslim religion to help return the ANC back in power. This was said during the delegation's meeting with the top ANC officials led by President Cyril Ramaphosa at Luthuli House. This was earlier today.
For too long, this government has wasted the potential of this province.
DA leader John Steenhuisen has again climbed into the ANC cadre deployment policy, saying it was preventing economic progression of towns and industries. DA leader John Steenhuisen was on the campaign trail in Uppington in the Northern Cape earlier today.
In KZN, where the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal says its success in the upcoming elections will be determined by the party's performance in urban areas such as eThekwini and uMgungundlovu.
There are 78,092 registered South Africans living abroad who are registered to vote in the upcoming national and provincial elections this coming Friday in various countries. The IEC said voting out of the country will take place in 111 foreign missions. South Africa is among the few countries on the continent that allows its citizens overseas to participate in elections. Today we focus on this topic of expatriates who will be casting their vote. I'm Buhle Keleba, joined by Mxolisi Masango. Good afternoon, Mxolisi.
Hello, Buhle. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm all good. Listen, it's crunch time now as we count down to the elections. And a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to be in your company as we take you through today's edition of Elections 360 Daily. And this is your go-to elections content show that airs on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure, SABC Lehigh on DTT, as well as the SABC News Channel 404. And this happens every Monday to Thursday from 5 to 5:30 p.m. Now today, we're just 16 days away to South Africans choosing new leaders to take the nation forward.
That's right. Remember that you can be part of the show by calling us on 011-714-0726 or 0727 or 0728, or hit us up on our social media platforms at SABC Izindaba on both X and Facebook. Our hashtag is #Elections360Daily. The Independent Electoral Commission says it's ready for the special votes abroad later this week. South Africa is among the few countries that allow citizens abroad to participate in elections. This year also saw a record number of registered voters overseas. Voting out of the country will take place on Friday in 9 countries, and the rest of the other countries will vote on Saturday. SABC International Desk reporter Kaelihle Khumalo filed this report.
We are ready. The administrative parts have been addressed, and we now wait for the 2 voting days, and we hope all will go well.
South Africa says it's all systems go for those who'll vote abroad on the 17th and 18th May. Over 78,000 citizens are expected to vote outside of the country in 111 diplomatic missions. Some of the largest international voting stations are in London, United Kingdom, The Hague in the Netherlands, Canberra, Australia, and Dubai in the UAE. Some political parties say people must not forgo this opportunity.
Even those who are voting overseas next week, they must make sure all overseas voters vote for the EFF.
Well, obviously we're delighted that more people are going to be able to vote. We think it's the right of every citizen, regardless of where they are in the world, to exercise their right to vote. Obviously we're using our Democratic Alliance Abroad, DA Abroad organisation we have, which will monitor those elections.
The IEC is working with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. They've shipped voting materials, including voting booths, ballot boxes, stationery packs, and the relevant list of approved voters.
We will be opening voting stations in 9 countries on the 17th of May. Those countries are mostly in the Middle East. The rest of the countries overseas are South African citizens will vote on the 18th of May, which is a Saturday. Stations will open at 7 and they will close at 7 in the evening.
But voting won't take place in Sudan, Ukraine and Israel as missions remain closed due to conflicts. IEC says it wants the polls to go smoothly.
We maintain liaison with political parties like we do in the country. I know in London, I can confirm, we have a meeting scheduled next week, Wednesday, with political parties there to discuss the voting process.
The electoral body further says after the voting process, the ballot will be transported through a secure channel back to the National Office of the Electoral Commission for counting. The votes will be counted in the presence of agents representing contestants. Kailihle Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
So we continue with the program today, and Pretoria has announced its preparedness to dispatch voting materials to 115 countries. This is to ensure that South Africans living abroad can exercise their democratic right to vote. Now, in a statement, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO, said the Electoral Commission of South Africa, the IEC, has met logistics for dispatching election materials. Joining us to further on this is SABC News' international news editor, Sophie Mukwena, joins us right now in studio. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. So what is the IEC saying about preparedness? Because there has been conversations on this on end to say that they are ready to roll out this election. Are they ready?
The Electoral Commission of South Africa has pointed out when I spoke to the official, as you heard in that instance, that they are ready. We expect the electoral body to announce more or share more information tomorrow at the media briefing, but I do know that they are ready, and I do know that they have already spoken to those who are on the ground in different missions around the world. We know that most of those stations will be having people who will be assisting voters there, particularly from the Department of International Relations. But the big one, particularly the one in London, I was told that a senior IEC official will be there, because when you look at that polling station, it has got more than 20,000 voters. It will be in the area of Trafalgar Square in London. Trafalgar Square has got a historic perspective in relation to the struggle in South Africa. This is where, before 1994, many people converged and marched to the then apartheid mission to protest against the regime. And therefore, it will be amazing when those visuals come out, when we see those thousands of South Africans who will be in that square, you know, reminiscence of the 1994 voting. And I think that is quite an important story.
And speaking of 1994, Sophie, and we narrow it back to this upcoming election, it has been likened somewhat to that of 1994, and the sense of many people on the ground, there's a sense of excitement and also a sense of anticipation on how things will turn out. What are the conversations doing the round right now on the international front, particularly where ordinary South Africans living abroad are concerned? What are they saying? Are they just as excited?
You know, South Africans are very techno-savvy, and you can imagine those who are outside the country, they are exposed to technology. They are talking. I saw the former Gauteng Premier Mbazi Mashilowa talking to Palesa Murudi in Washington, already asking them whether they will be at the polling stations. You can see some South Africans on social media, some wearing the regalias of the different political parties, engaging in the discussions, which speaks to South Africans who are living abroad. They are in touch, they are in tune, they are keeping communication flowing in terms of what's happening here at home. That is why you see this huge number of South Africans that will be going to the polls on Saturday, starting from Friday.
And as we continue to have this conversation, Sophie, we just saw that slide now that illustrates the numbers insofar as voting patterns abroad. And as we said in our intro, there are over about 78,000 experts who are registered to vote. And this is compared to just 28,000 back in 2019. What do you think is the reason for this huge increase?
It speaks to South Africans. They feel very strong that they want to participate. They feel that this is a hard-won victory in terms of allowing South Africans to participate in the democratic processes in South Africa. But also, you know that there are challenging issues here at home, and South Africans are still in touch with their home or South Africa and Africa in general, and they want to contribute towards making democracy a success. And we saw that huge swing, I mean, more than 70,000. And as I pointed out, polling stations in Netherlands, in the United States of America, in Saudi Arabia, in the United Arab Emirates, those large numbers, you can see South Africans are really looking forward to do this. Unfortunately, we will be having our correspondents in some of these countries where we will bring you the voting and speak to South Africans in the queues in terms of how they feel, and we'll get a better sense why this high turnout.
I tell you, we're most certainly looking forward to that. That's Sophie Mokoena, SABC News International Editor, giving us a greater perspective of what's happening abroad insofar as that voting is concerned. You're watching Elections 360 Daily. Back with you straight after this.
Political parties also shared their thoughts on the voting abroad this coming elections. This is what they had to say.
We are, however, still concerned that voting stations is not available at consulates headed by honorary consuls, despite the fact that the Electoral Court ordered the IEC to facilitate this. They have chosen to appeal the decision and consequently have not implemented for this election, and that has had a dampening effect on the spirits of South Africans living in Australia, parts of Europe and even the USA, where if they could have voted at honorary consuls, a bigger number even would have been able to cast their ballots this year.
We want to wish all the best to the South African citizens who are abroad who will be voting soon. Obviously, for a new party, we believe that we are at a major disadvantage insofar as engaging new voters who are abroad, because you need resources and you need to have access to them, which we don't have as a new party. We think that the IEC needs to reconsider and think carefully how to also allow this space and advantage for new parties to have access to these voters.
So those were the views from South Africans living and working abroad. Let's now welcome our guest joining us via our video link, Grant Masteron, who is the independent elections specialist. He's going to talk about the right to vote for South Africans working and living abroad. Mr. Masteron, thank you so much for your time on Elections 360 Daily. Let's start with the numbers. So the numbers say almost about 80,000 South Africans living abroad have registered to vote, and this is obviously a high number. What do you make of this number?
Hi, Felicity. Nice to talk to you. It's an encouraging sign to see that the accessibility that the IEC is making available internationally is being taken up by voters. I think in the past, there's been a lot of effort on the part of the IEC to make available through the Department of International Relations and Cooperation the polling places to vote internationally. And it's not a cheap exercise. It's quite a challenging exercise for the IEC in the midst of an already challenging electoral process. And the numbers in the past just haven't justified it. But seeing a more than doubling in numbers since 2019 is a very encouraging sign that actually the diaspora of South Africans living abroad remain with their roots fixed in South Africa, that they haven't just abandoned the country, they haven't said goodbye, and that they've lost all interest in expressing their voting rights. So I think overall it's a very, very encouraging development, and I'd love to see it continue and to improve over the next couple of elections.
And obviously there is a limited number of polling stations that will be available. Does this not in any way pose a stumbling block towards attaining this democracy that everybody's talking about, that the foundations have solely been laid for right now?
No, I don't believe it causes a stumbling block. I think that when you look at the number of consulates that are being made available and over 111 consulates that are available around the world, you can't have polling stations globally. There has to be a limit in some form to the extent to which the IEC can cater for voters outside of South Africa. And there needs to be practical limits on that. But when you look at the 111, we're really only talking about 4 or 5 places where you have registrations in the thousands. And apart from that, it's a few here and there. I was in West Africa when the registration process was taking place, and I was interacting with DIRCO at that time in West Africa. And it was very interesting to see that the messaging this time has been much sharper and much clearer for South Africans who are maybe working on contracts in West Africa, who are business or pleasure for whatever reason were in West Africa at the time. And so I think that probably what's happening is the messaging is getting out there better, and we're starting to see an uptick. But you can't cover the whole globe to allow for South Africans everywhere to vote.
So your fair assessment on the ground right now is that it's all systems go and you're happy with how everything is ready to go ahead right now?
I think whenever you're talking about a global exercise, and that's what the IEC is trying to do here, and they are relying on DIRCO as a very willing and very able partner to help them, there's always going to be challenges. There's been challenges getting the materials to all stations. I think one of your political parties in the intro picked up on that. Yes, we know that there have been particular countries where those materials have arrived maybe later than ideal. In some cases, there have been sort of creative ways to overcome problems and solutions. I think that at the end of the day, what we want to see is as many South Africans who want to vote on those 2 special election days get the opportunity to do so. And as far as the IEC has taken steps to do that, I'm satisfied. I think that, could they do better? I'm sure, yes, you could always do better, but the numbers have doubled. And this is, I think, the positive sign that I was looking for when it comes to overseas voting.
Right, look, it's a thumbs up from you, and that's certainly encouraging. Let's park it here for now because we need to take a quick ad break. We're back with you straight after this. You're still tuned into Elections 360 Daily.
Welcome back to Elections 360 Daily Show. If you have just joined us, we are talking about voting for South Africans living abroad. We speak to South Africans based in Turkey, Germany and Ireland, talking to us about if they will be voting, where they will be voting and more.
I'm Leanne Adams. I'm from Cape Town, living in Istanbul, Turkey with my husband and our 3-year-old daughter. My husband and I will be voting in the special ballot on Saturday the 18th of May. And what we've learned so far is that this is actually turning out to be a pretty expensive exercise for us. Because there's no South African mission in Istanbul, we have to travel to the Turkish capital, Ankara. That's around 450 kilometers away. And the most convenient way to do this is to fly, because the flight's it's a little bit over an hour long. So we've booked 3 return tickets for Saturday. Once we are in Ankara, it's a 40-minute drive from the airport to the embassy. So we've hired a car to get to and from the airport as well. I am a little disappointed that I only get to cast a ballot nationally. I would have preferred to be able to vote on the provincial and regional ballots as well.
My boyfriend and I moved to Ireland just over a year ago to follow up on a job opportunity. It's been very lucrative, but we do miss home quite a bit. It's been a challenge to know whether or not you ought to vote if the problems in the country aren't directly affecting you. So we're based in Dublin. We have decided we will be voting in this year's elections because South Africa is still our home and we don't plan to be gone for forever. That and none of us are in Ireland. We have family members there. So it took us a long time to decide who to vote for, and we try very hard to stay abreast with the news because it doesn't feel right to vote if the problems in the country aren't affecting you directly.
Hi, I'm Louis. I work and live here in Bonn, but I will be voting in Berlin next week. Now, the journey to the German capital is about the same distance as Johannesburg is from Durban. That means I'll be taking a train next Friday, staying over on Friday night, and then voting at the embassy early on Saturday morning. There's quite a group of South Africans in Germany that have organized around this election, and people are offering ride sharing and lifts to get to the embassy next week. But it is a bit of a logistical problem, and some have chosen to go to countries that is closer than Berlin would be, for instance from Bonn, next door to the Netherlands, and to vote in The Hague and also in Brussels even. So yeah, there are quite a few people keen to vote here.
So we have sadly come to the end of the discussion on today's program. This was also on voting for South Africans living abroad. Thank you so much for joining us. But a big thank you to our guest who joined us there on Zoom, and that was Grant Masteron, who is an independent election specialist who spoke to us about this issue on end. And tomorrow, Buhle, we're also discussing another hot potato, and we are talking about independent candidates, right?
That is right. We will see you tomorrow at 4:30 right here on Elections 360 Daily. I'm Buhle Keleba from ourselves.
Yep. Good night. Thanks for watching.
See you tomorrow.